Welcome to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lippman. Today, we're interviewing Ran Tal. This podcast is kindly sponsored by Camera Museum of London at 44 Museum Street. Hi, Ran Tal.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How you made it to make this connection between us?
Well, I was doing my research, and I was in Paris, and I went to Magnum Photos there, and I had a look at the archives, and I saw Misha Baram. I looked him up and saw there was a documentary being made about him, so that was the beginning of the contact.
Okay. That's great.
Okay. Ran Tal, thanks very much for joining us. Can you tell us what makes a good documentary, in your opinion?
Wow, it's a huge question. I'm not sure I have the right answer for that because there's so many ways to make a great documentary. That's what's so wonderful about non-fiction cinema, that it's come so many forms, genre, and different approach to reality. So I actually refuse to answer this kind of questions because there's no one answer.
So I assume this is the same answer to what makes a bad documentary.
Yeah, of course. I think creativity, and the way we deal with reality, and this is the fascinating aspect of non-fiction cinema. What we're doing with the reality in front of us, and how we shape it, and create a meaningful piece of let's call it cinema.
Do you learn a lot from watching good and bad documentaries or films or?
Yeah, of course. I'm a cinephile, and I think that's what I'm always try to convince my student. The best lesson you can have is watching films and then try your own. All the rest is just, it's nice and interesting, but you have to have you have to be, to know the history of cinema, know directors, know genre, and develop your own taste by watching and watching.
Can you tell us about the first film you made?
Wow. It depends what do you call film. One of my first documentary when I was a student at Tel Aviv University, I went to have a portrait of a very old Israeli director that came from Iraq and then make a huge career in Iran, and in the late 60s came to Israel and succeeds to make a blockbuster in Israel. But his cinema was so not related to the Israeli culture at the time, so they are attacked him for all the newspaper and stuff like that. And I met him in his last 5 years before he passed away. I tried to understand the passion to cinema and his life, and it was kind of amazing meeting between me and this very old and poor director that used to be the most successful in Israel in the beginning of the 70s.
What did you learn from him?
I don't know if I learned anything, but I was inspired by the passion, after so many years and many success and many failures, we still have this childhood passion for the movies, let's say. And I think it was quite amazing to see it. Until his last day, he was convinced that he's gonna shoot his next film, and everybody around him knows, it's not gonna happen. But he was coming, waking up every morning and working on his next feature that's nobody wants him to do, and nobody gave him money and support to do that. So it was inspiring and sad at the same time.
And what was his name again?
George Ovadia.
Okay. I understand that in 2000, and did you work in TV? How did you get into the media?
After I finished film school, they opened in Israel on the commercial channel. So we've been very lucky because suddenly the market and the industry is open for, for so many young people. That's the way I stepped into the television industry, usually in a commercial part to do promos and advertise and stuff like that. So I did it like 15 years. And I think it was one of my best schools working in this area. Everything I know about editing came from those 15 years doing promos and advertising for television.
What was it about editing?
I think when your job is to promote somebody else film or TV series or whatever, you don't have any connection to the materials, and you can play with the materials in such a free way. And it's so different from when you have your own material, things that are important and stuff like that. So the freedom that I had in front of all this film that I had to create short promos from them, it was a great lesson in editing. To be creative, because you don't, it's everything about creativity and capture the eye and the ear of the audience and nothing else. So it was a huge lesson and experience.
At the time, were you cutting film?
Yeah, I'm cutting other people.
But literally
making like take a 2 hours film and make it like 30 second promotion.
And were you actually cutting film, working with film, with rolls of film?
No, it was digitized. I haven't had any experience with the film, actually. I did it only once in the beginning, but very fast everybody went to video.
And did you make a lot of contacts, and do you still work with the people that you used to work with back in the TV days?
No, yeah, I had many friends for those time, and we did some projects together. But in the last, let's say, 10 years or 15 years, those people still, very close friend to mine, but I'm with other people.
Okay, so we're going to move to Children of the Sun. How did that idea come about?
I think Children of the Sun is the result of when I have my own children. And suddenly I understood that they're going to have a totally different childhood in the center of Tel Aviv. And, if you compare it to my childhood in the kibbutz, because I grew up in a kibbutz in the 60s and 70s, and I realized they're going to have a totally different experience. And it's making me think about my childhood. And the way I can think and research stuff is to make a film. And I think this was my trigger to start to deal with, in a way, it's not about my own biography, it's my parents' biography, but to start to deal with the concept of the very, very strange and unique environment that I grew up in.
So Children of the Sun documents and follows the lives of people living and growing up in the kibbutz. Was it one kibbutz solely?
No, it was like a medical kibbutz. I collect film for like 90s films for dozens of different kibbutzim, and interview many people, some my family or the expanded family in the kibbutz, and some other people for many places, and create like imaginary group that's grow up together. It's about the relationship between the children and their parents, and then when they come, their parents, between them and their own children. So it's the concept of the family radical, unique family that the kibbutz tried to create.
I noticed that the at least in the first 30 minutes, there are no images of the people that you're currently interviewing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the full film. You don't see the people that speak. It's this kind of, I take off this thing that's, when watching film, it's always in sync, and I have this different channel, sound and picture, and play between them. So you don't see the people in the very end. In the very end, you have like a close-up of those people very, very old.
At the time, did you manage to get funding for the film at the beginning? Did you pitch the film to someone?
Yeah, I pitched the film. I've been lucky to get very early support from the documentary channel here in Israel, yes, DocAviv. But then I have a long time to collect the rest of the money because people don't understand the aesthetic decision that I make in the film. And they ask me why we don't see the people, why not to shoot the people. And I was insist not to shoot them, just record sound. And it was a little bit dangerous for all the decision makers. So it took a lot of time to collect the rest of the money.
And the film did well. What happened when the film was released? What was the reaction?
It was amazing. I sit like 2 years in the editing room with my editor, edit all amateur films, black and white, with some intimate interview in the soundtrack. We didn't know what would be the result of this experience that we had. And suddenly it was wonderful. We won all the prizes in Israel. It went out there to the commercial cinema. And it was huge success in Israel, and it also traveled a lot in many festivals in mainly North America, but a little bit also in Europe as well.
How do you work with an editor? Do you have a vision? Do you know exactly what you're doing, or does the editor also help put together scenes and stories?
It's totally a process of research and try to develop the style of the film. Because for me, the form is even sometimes more important than the story or the content. So without understanding the form or create specific language for the specific film, it's difficult for me to move on. So the first steps always with the editor is try to understand what kind of film we want to make and what kind of rules we can put on the table in order to create, let's say, a language of the film. So it's exciting process. Not just looking for the story, also try to find out what kind of nonfiction we want to create.
And what kind of idea did you have for Children of the Sun?
I knew from the beginning it would be amateur cinema, like home films of people of the kibbutz that shoot themselves. It will be this kind of intimate relationship with the camera and the characters, like you have in family albums and family videos. And I knew from the beginning that I'm not going to shoot anyone, just recording sound. And I knew from the beginning it would be like a live thing from birth to death.
Wow, very interesting. And you decided to go into education, is that right? When did that happen?
You're talking about teaching and stuff?
Teaching, yes.
I think it's the result that it's very difficult to make a living only from documentary in Israel, especially the kind of documentary that I try to do. They are not having any commercial promise, and it's very difficult to finance them and to make a big budget. So if I was insist to do my own stuff, I felt that I need another source of, I have a family and I think teaching cinema was, I guess, the natural solution for that problem.
And what's your philosophy of teaching? Do you have the kids grown up and been successful as a result? Is there something that you could?
I think no. I think making films the way I believe it's more of a lifestyle, of a mission, of like any artist, you do it because you want to do it. Nobody needs your films. The world can be the same worth without or with your films.
Right.
So it's a kind of passion that came out from the student or from the artist, and they need to raise their voice. So this is their responsibility, and they need to understand that from the very beginning. And then I think my role to help them to develop their own style and their own voice, and to help them to create their own stories about their own identity.
Yeah, you definitely focus on people. Is that something you're interested? Is people some? Do you like people? Do you enjoy listening to them?
Yeah, I think I'm very curious about the human race, but I'm also interested in places because I did like trilogy about places. It's Trillion of the Sun, the Garden of Eden, and the museum. I think what's unique there, it's a collage, huge collage, that's in the center of the collage is always the space, institute, space, location, and the relationship between the characters and space is very, very interesting for me. And if the space is interesting enough and have many layers, you can use the space in order to understand much more deep understanding of the Israeli society. So it's a relationship between the space and the people. But most of my previous films deal with the collage of people and not traditional documentary with one protagonist that's having his own voyage and conflicts and stuff like that.
There was some similarities with Children of the Sun and 1341 Frames of Love and War. How did that happen? 1341. How did you meet the photographer of the film?
Yeah, it's a connection if you're talking about the style, because both of those film dealing with archive. That's I love archive. It's one of my biggest fetish is to go to archive and try to find treasures. I can spend months and sometimes years in archive. So the materials from Children of the Sun and Barham project, it's the source is archive. One is a collective archive from many, many places, and one only from Barham archive. But Barham archive starts in a different way. I really wanted to do 3 films about history and about our ability to understand reality, understand history. It came from, the last 100 pages in Tolstoy, War and Peace. When he's speaking about history and about, he challenged the historian that try to understand and explain to us what happened and why it happened. And Tolstoy sees it in a totally different way. So that history is the result of endless people doing endless action in endless places. And all this action together became what we call history. And because we are not able to live in this, we don't have a meaning for our life, we try to tell a story about the past. So I wanted to understand this question, so I decided to make 2 films. One about the player, the guy that came into the history and tried to play from his team against the old forces around him. And the second one about the one that's responsible for document the same history. So the first one, it was what if Ehud Barak War and Peace. Only Ehud Barak, former Israeli Prime Minister, speaking the film, direct to the cinema. 4 days of interview. This is the whole film. And the second one, I went to Barham apartment in Ramat Gan, not far away from Tel Aviv. And the moment I went down to his archive, I felt this is the place for me. That I want to stay and I want to understand and I want to work with these images, and that's how it actually started.
Were you influenced by the fog of war? That
of course, when I did the Barak project, fog of war was inspiration, like for many other directors. Errol Morris is one of the biggest artists, and it totally, it was. I stand very proud on the shoulders of Errol Morris. Yeah.
Have you ever met your heroes, your documentary heroes, or film heroes?
Sometimes by accident, sometimes the research led me to different people, and then my intuition told me if I want to go deep and be more involved with the characters. But it depends. If it's like Barak and Barham, that it's totally one person, or it's a collage of many, many, many people. So it's a different approach.
Do you think that your interviewees, for example, Barak and Barasham, Baram, were telling the truth at all times, or was there a sort of what they thought was the truth for you?
Can you define what is the truth?
Well, what really happened? Facts.
Yeah, fact. But fact is the basis of interpretation of the facts, It's everything is about the interpretation, not about the fact. Sometimes we can argue about the fact, but even if we agreed about the fact, what is interesting is not the fact, it's the meaning of the fact. And of course, the protagonists, like myself, like you, we have interest in let's say, in history, in memory. So I don't think we can trust archive. I don't think we can trust memories. But this is the only tool for us to try to understand the reality. So this game is fascinating, and I'm sure there is more than one truth. But when I felt that my truth is honest enough, I can accept other interpretation to the same story or to the same reality, but I want to be honest with my voice, and this is my responsibility here.
I'm wondering whether your films have been accused of being propaganda tools.
I'm not sure. No, because I'm not dealing with direct ideology or politics. I'm always behind the situation. I'm dealing with the main conflict and contradiction of Zionism, but I hope it came from try to understand instead of attack. I don't think the filmmakers are better than their characters. Some filmmakers feel that they are better and they have the answers for the whole questions. And I think that's our mission, if we have any mission, I don't know. It's to ask the right questions instead than deliver big answers.
Do you think documentary has changed today? And what has changed since?
Since when?
Since the internet.
Yeah, I think technology it always make changes in art. It's and definitely the digital time, the internet, the source of the money. All these games that any filmmakers or any artist need to deal with influence about the piece itself. And I don't know in what way, but it's totally there. Netflix wants something, the foundation in Europe wants something else. The audience maybe needs something else. The side guys want you to deliver something that it will be tasty for them. So there is so much around us that influence films. We don't live in a bubble.
So when you're creating a pitch or a story, are you thinking about the audience, or are you thinking about the funder, or?
When I pitch, I'm thinking about the fund because I want the money. So it's definitely I want to create a pitch that I think will supply to the television or the foundation what they want to hear. I cannot change my ideas. I cannot lie to them, but I can emphasize a different part of the world. I think this is very common behavior when you're asking for the money.
And does the end result change from the pitch? And have there been issues whether the producer wanted changes or?
No, I don't think I created something totally different. In the end, it's what I'm pitching. But I hope my film have many angles and many layers. So it depends what kind of layer you put, in the center of the pitch. But I'm always prepare myself about this aesthetic decision, about the main stories, about the main conflict that I want to create, etc. I'm not lying, not at all, because I don't believe in lying, and it's a long relationship with those people. So pitching is a very difficult art, and unfortunately, I'm not the best in this art.
Do you write the pitches, or does someone else write them with you or for you?
No, I'm writing it sometimes with producer, with friends, but I'm totally responsible for that.
Have you ever pitched to IDFA or other organizations?
Yeah, I pitch IDFA, I pitch hot dogs, I pitch in Israel, I pitch in foundation, I pitch to private people, you name it. It's a huge part of my life, of our life, is to pitch and try to make people, organization to support our.
And what's the ratio of success?
I don't know, very low.
Even though you've got a name for yourself and you've won awards, does that change anything?
I think in our culture, they judge you by your last piece. Nobody cares if you did been successful 20 years or 10 years ago. They see what is your last film, and of course it gives you some credit, but especially television is driven by stories and accents. And my film is totally different. It's not about traditional, strong kind of storytelling or like sensational accents. So sometimes it's difficult for me to.
Have you worked with people who wanted to control your film?
No, never. They never pay enough to ask them.
Let's imagine that you're working for, if you did a film for Netflix, how much control would Netflix have, do you think?
I don't know. I never worked with Netflix, but what I heard, they have totally control. That's why most of their films looks the same.
Okay, so aesthetically, style, and
storytelling,
film, and all that. Yeah. I see. Is there a particular film you want to be making that you haven't made so far?
No, I'm always concerned about my next project. If there will be a next project, you never know. I have many ideas, but not like a big dream that I want to achieve now.
Can you tell us a bit about any bad experiences you had during filming and how you overcame it?
It's always a struggle. between me and the subject, between me and the characters, between me and the budget, and it's always a very difficult time. When I did the museum, about the Israel Museum, after like a year of work, I understood that I have no films there. And it was a very difficult time for me until I met one of my characters, a blind woman. And when she told me that as a blind woman, she understands the world through the way that other people explain to her about what's in front of her, about the role of narration, about the role of storytelling, for her to understand reality only through voices. It's like opened the gate for me to understand the Israel Museum as a factory of stories, factory that create different narratives and stories. And it was a beautiful moment. Suddenly I understood something very deep about this institute and about the way that I can open the gates and understand this institute in a much deeper way.
And when Herzog once said that, you know, he encourages people to get ideas through books by reading and reading and reading. How far is that true for you?
I think I identified with that. My last two films came definitely from Tolstoy and from Yeshayahu Berlin, you know, the English intellectual that's wrote about Tolstoy. And any of my films came from a huge research in any aspect of the subject in order for me to understand the discourse, the books, the films, the play, the poetry that's been written about the subject. And it's, you know, it's given me so much knowledge, idea, and inspiration. So I prefer to learn a lot, to be in the institution, in the place, like months without opening the camera. And only then, when I have some knowledge about the style and the way I want to do it, then I bring the camera in. So I'm not shooting like 400 days or open the camera in the morning and turn it off in the evening and then sitting 2 years in the editing. It's important for me to do a huge research before I, lift the camera about the border places.
So basically you want to crystallize the story or the scene or the character in your head before beginning?
No, but I want to understand the essence of the issue.
Okay.
I really want that the scene or the characters will surprise me. I don't plan everything, but I want to be able to catch what is around me if I have more knowledge about, let's say, what is a museum, what is a national park, what is a kibbutz, what is what is meaning to be a photographer, a news photographer, and the history, So I spend a lot of time studying, and I enjoy it a lot. But I'm totally open to lack and to improvise during the shooting. Sometimes I create the scene by myself, I create the setting, and then I try to document and recording what's happening there. And sometimes it's just there, like a direct cinema, classical direct cinema. But my film is more, let's say, hybrid than pure direct cinema, if there is something like pure direct cinema.
Okay. My Zoom is running out in about 2 minutes. Do you think I could send you another link? Maybe we can continue for another 15 or so.
You can listen to me more.
I've got a few more other questions. I'll send an email soon, in about 2 minutes.
All right. See you.
Okay. There it is.
I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, that's fine. Um, okay. This is good. No, the audience needs to understand process. And so when you interview someone, who's directing? Is it you or is it the subject?
For me, it's more a dialogue than an interview, especially when I'm doing this collage with private people that I meet them for, just one time for an hour or two. So I always go to their homes and we're sitting in the kitchen and I open my, my recording, very simple recording machine with microphone, similar to your microphone. And then we speak about life. And I don't know what would be the result. And I don't know if it would be useful for the film. So it's kind of dialogue between strangers speaking about life. And I always believe if you really want to listen without any targeting something, just listen and understand, something very beautiful can come out of this innocent conversation. And every time it's a surprise me. It's many times I meet somebody that is totally stranger to me, and after an hour or 2 hours, he can share with me some very intimate parts of his soul. And I felt, in this moment, I'm feeling very good that somebody gave me very precious gift. And many times it's not even come into the film; it stay out of the film. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
But this moment, it's a magic. So it's more about dialogue than interview, and many times I take my voice outside of this conversation. It's became like a monologue, stuff like that.
Have there been times where people have not wanted to open up?
Yeah, many times. It's a game, it's a meeting with people. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. And I'm totally prepared for that. It's like any meeting between two people. You need some kind of chemistry, background, special interest, that something unique will happen. And you never know. Otherwise, it will not be interesting. So many, many times I had a great cup of tea. They gave me some cake, and then I go home. Okay, it was a nice trip, but nothing good for the film.
Do you have any techniques to encourage people to open up?
I guess I have, but I never put it as a list. When students ask me about that, because in my film, people are very much intimate with me. They tell me a very, very intimate stories. So I don't have a technique. It's like I told you, I really want to listen very deeply, want to listen to them and share with them my experience. And people are much more open and sincere when they feel that you don't want nothing for them, just to, share experience, life, fears, and dreams, and so on. And it's happening.
You said you like to go into, put yourself in other people's shoes. What was it like to try to be a photographer for your latest film? How did you visualize that?
I think in the case of Micha Baram, the photographer, I had like a privilege to have this huge archive, 500,000 negatives. It's the most important private archive in Israel. And then I felt that I want you as an audience watch reality through his eyes. So every frame, what you see in the film, Micha Baram was there with his Leica, see what is in front of him, lift the camera, make the frame, and then switch and freeze the moment. So I felt when you watch this film, maybe you, as an imaginary audience, can feel what is the meaning of being a photographer.
Right. And you said there was half a million photos or negatives. How did you choose what would constitute something to be watched or
it's a huge research and see what I can digitize and scan and what already been scanned during the last 50, 60 years. And then sitting in the editing room with my editor with like thousands of photographs and like 30 or 40 hours of interviews with Micha and his wife and his sons, and try to think in very methodical way to put it in subject, in scene, different title. And after months of just preparing materials or start to edit it, we have some ideas about scene, and then scene became a sequence, and then the sequence became like a structure of the film. So there is no big plan behind that. Just playing with the materials, with the sound, with the great images. And sometimes the images give me some creative ideas, and sometimes the dialogue can give me another idea. So it's a back and forth dialogue between me and the materials, and between me and the Baram family.
Someone told me once that Magnum Photos owns the photos from the photographers or the assignments that they assign people to. In what way was Magnum Photos involved with this?
They are not involved. Micha is a member of Magnum Collective since the late 60s. I think right now he's the oldest photographer of Magnum, but he had a very special relationship with them in terms of rights. So he owned the right of his archive. So I guess it's not the same kind of contract between all the photographer and Magnum. And Micha is not a full member. We have special conditions with Magnum.
Right, negotiated. Were they involved at all in any way during the documentary?
No.
I hear that the IDF has also got some of his films or negatives. Is that correct as well? They've got some of his archives.
Who?
The IDF.
Micha worked many years in an IDF newspaper called Abachane. It used to be a very successful newspaper in Israel owned by the IDF. And he started his career as a photographer of this newspaper. He worked as a photojournalist, classical photojournalist. So many of his images created during his service to the newspaper. Then he became a Magnum member and be as a New York Times photographer for 25 years. And I guess then the New York Times had the right. So a photojournalist is always a very, very complicated relationship between the owners, let's say the newspaper, and the photographer that's go there every day to hunt some images, for make a living. So it's a very interesting life to be a photojournalist.
One thing I didn't get was why he stopped taking pictures when digital photography came about.
I think I have my own interpretation in the film. You saw the film?
Yes.
So my interpretation was when Micha was not being able to identify with his subjects anymore in 100% like he used to be. Then some of the passion went away. And of course, it's come with age and digital time because it's very difficult. It's like it's a difficult walk to be a photojournalist running with 5 cameramen, battlefield and stuff like that. It's much more easy to do it when you're 20 than when you're 60. But I think the main issue that Micha, as a religious almost Zionist, couldn't identify in the Israeli project in the same way in the beginning of his career.
So what do you think changed? The subjects, you mentioned the subjects changed. He changed, but maybe it was
changed,
also...
reality changed.
Right.
I think Micha, in every place that Micha being there with his camera, there was many other photographers. He'd never been alone. So what made him such a great artist, great photographer? Why his images is much more powerful for many other photographers that shot in the same area? I think it's the passion and the way he felt that he need to be there, he need to document this situation because it's very, very important. Even if he will die, you know, it's like sometimes you see seeking for death because he always like 1 meter closer to dangerous than the others. And when this passion disappeared, he decided to quit. He didn't want to shoot anymore.
You did something clever with Children of the Sun. You kind of put the film in chapters, and you got us to understand the process of the kibbutz through, you know, education, the kids being away from the parents, the freedom they had to play together. Then eventually they became very good fighters thereafter. Was that something you had in mind before the shooting, or did that happen in the edit?
No shooting, I want to remind you, only research.
Sorry, not the shooting, the research.
Yeah, but I think this kind of solution came in the end, in the editing room, when you want to have the structure to be more clear to the audience. You want to make the storytelling much more clear. So sometimes I'm using these chapters. I did it in Children of the Sun, I did it in the museum. The Garden of Eden is the seasons, and Ehud Barak, it's a 6 major decision he made during his career. So in all these films, I use chapter to help this huge collage to make sense to the audience.
Where did you get the idea to do a story about Ehud Barak on War and Peace?
Yeah, we spoke about it. The idea came from Tolstoy, War and Peace. Yes. And then I tried to figure out which Israeli leadership, statesman, general, can be brilliant enough, educated enough, wide enough to be able to speak about history from his memory, you know, to do zoom in to the moment and be able to do zoom out and see the result and what he can ask or understand from this moment. So there's no too many politicians like that in Israel. I don't know which one you're gonna pick in England. Which one is intellectual enough to be able to be there like 90 minutes speaking and still be interested. So there's no many solution here in Israel. I don't know many people like that in Israel, and he was retired.
Yeah.
And Benjamin Netanyahu was, prime minister at that time. So I took my chance with Barak.
And of course, there's an issue of access. You know, not everyone can get access to former prime ministers, and it's even harder in the UK. But did you speak to him or know him beforehand? How was it to get access?
First of all, access. It's what it's the major issue in photojournalism. If you have access, you can deliver. And also for filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, they need access. And you need to use, any opportunity to have to get the access. In the case of Ehud Barak, I just emailed him. I never met him. We didn't have any connection. Only my background and my previous film. And I asked for a meeting. And then I proposed, the way I wanted to do the film. And it took a while. Then he accepted my offer.
Did he have to sign a release form?
No.
I see. What if there was something in the film he didn't like? Did that ever happen?
Yeah, it's happened. But in the case of a politician, he knows the situation. He's not like somebody in the street.
No.
There's a lot of preparation. So everything is recording. If I don't take something out of context in a very brutal way, you cannot say anything. It's different with the ordinary people in my other films. They need to sign up, but not somebody with so much power like former prime minister.
Did you have to email the questions or send over the questions in advance?
No, not at all.
Did he know about the 6 major events in advance?
Yeah, we have some ideas. I have some meeting before the shooting with him. We discussed the main ideas of the film. He knew that I don't want to get this kind of gossips and private life, and I want to end it in 2000 in Camp David Summit. So he knew about the outline of the project, but he didn't know about the way the conversation will develop. And of course, he had his own interest to accept he worried about his legacy, interest about his legacy. But this has happened in any meeting with two people. It's always something behind that.
Yeah, that was definitely a motivation. Does documentary affect your private life, or does it take over your life in general? Are you thinking about it all the time? There are some filmmakers that just, it overtakes them, or the work.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's make my life much more interesting. I'm privileged to meet so many interesting people, to listen to so many background, identity, and it's make my life much more rich and make me able to see realities through the eyes of different people, different group, different biography and identity. And I'm glad I've been able to do that. And of course, in many other ways, it's influenced my life. If it will be success, not success, failed, I will have money to finish the film. So it always occupied my mind when I'm doing film.
I noticed that most of the films are mostly about stories inside Israel. Are there films that you would like to do outside Israel?
So far, no. I'm very much interested in understanding the Israeli project. The Israeli project is so radical, so controversial. There is so many contradictions inside the Israeli project. It's a multicultural society with so many conflicts. So I think you can live 7 times and still photograph the Israeli project, and it will be interesting now. But so far, I'm research the Israeli society. This is my mission.
What's your definition of the Israeli project?
It's in my films. It took me years and many films to put my scent on this question. So
it's in your films.
Yeah.
Your audience. Who are your audience? And how do you know who's watching it?
And it's much more easy to know when you screen it in theater in Israel, for example. When I'm going with the film and answer, doing this Q&A with many people in many small towns and villages. This is my opportunity to meet the people. But when it's out there on television, even in Israel, and of course outside of Israel, I have no clue what is the influence on the audience.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about your future plans?
No, not yet. Sorry.
Do you think it's important to keep your projects secret before beginning or
It's not a
before getting the
secret.
funding?
Yeah, it's not about being secret. It's about, I'm not sure
Yeah.
by myself if this is, will be my next project, if I will know what kind of film I would like to do. So like I told you in the beginning, I start with a big research. And many of my subjects stop after the research because I didn't know how to do film from the research.
I see.
So I'm now in the stage that I want to start a new research, but who knows?
So, you started research. Is there several researchers that you do at the same time, or do you focus on one at a time?
Focused on one. You know, I'm very busy with the Tel Aviv University. I also the editor of DocAviv, it's a magazine of the documentary critics. So there is so much around me. Unfortunately, I cannot do more than one research. Sometimes I'm lucky when I have this overlap between films, but sometimes there is like 2 years after a film and until I'm starting a new.
The Crib, is that influenced by the Cahiers du Cinéma, the journal?
What do you mean?
There was a famous French journal that I think was created in the 60s called Cahiers du Cinéma. And
Cahiers du Cinéma is the most important newspaper on cinema. That's what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, how does the Crib, did you get some ideas from the Cahiers du Cinéma?
No, unfortunately, it's in French. You know, the French people never think it's important enough to translate this historical magazine. I hope it will be in the future. So I read some pieces that have been translated to English.
Right.
But this door is closed for me.
And the Crib, where does that go to? How can people read it, see it?
You're talking about the Crib?
Yes.
But the Crib, by the way, is closed up. The meaning is closed up. The Crib is in Hebrew. It's for Hebrew readers. We have just 2 interviews with Israeli directors in English that we translate. But it's to increase the discourse, the intellectual discourse on documentary cinema in Israel, and to have one place that you really can discuss cinema in a serious way, and as a non-fiction cinema in a serious way as an art, not just a subject of politics, sociological questions, political questions. Let's speak about the cinema itself. And this maybe is influenced by the spirit of Cahiers.
Are you at all influenced by the cinema and documentaries of other countries in the Middle East?
Yeah, we're watching all the time, you know, fiction and non-fiction. You know, like the rest of the world. I think we influenced here by the Iranian cinema, Romanian cinema, Turkish cinema. It's such a great artists and filmmakers in those countries. And also, you know, the East European, everywhere. You know. Right now, it's in this time, it's a very global. So every few years, there's a new inspiration, and that's so fascinating.
As well as a filmmaker and teacher, what do you recommend to your students?
About what?
About creative filmmaking.
I think be honest with yourself, take risks, listen to everyone, but make your own decision in the end. Nobody knows better than you.
And do you have any philosophies of life, Ran Tal?
No. I'm sorry.
And how would you like people to remember your films, or what would you want the audience to take out of it, or is there a message?
I don't believe in message. I don't think art have a message. I like art when it's enigmatic enough to be able to, that the reflection will be different every time. If it's strict and give you message, after you understand the message, it's not interesting anymore. But if there's some mysterious and enigma, then it can work for many years. So I don't know. I think it's my experience, it's my feeling, it's the way I understand and feel reality around me. And I really hope that some people will watch it and have some inspiration to continue, try to understand human experience in general and their life in particular.
What has been your favorite film so far of making?
I don't have one, so I critics all of them. Yeah.
What would you critique about your latest film?
It's still too fresh. I'm not watching the film. I'm just watching people watching the film. So it takes me some years after I finish the film that I will be able to, to watch it like a normal people.
What about Children of the Sun? What would you critique of that?
I don't know. I guess I have some problem with some editing decisions, but in general, I think I like the film.
Right. Thank you very much, Ran Tal.
Thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure to meet you. I hope it was interesting for you as well.
Yes, absolutely. We look forward to seeing more of your films.
Thank you so much. And if you're in Tel Aviv, don't hesitate to call me.
Thank you. All the best. Bye. Thank you for listening to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lippman. Should you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please get in touch. This podcast is kindly sponsored by Cameron Museum of London at 44 Museum Street.